Hare Krishna and welcome to this evening's program hosted by the Gita Reading Society in Singapore. We welcome all devotees today. We had an entire morning program on mantra meditation and immersion exercise of the chanting of the holy names, and it was so well attended. And now we will be chanting chapter 5, text 2 from Bhagavad Gita. So we hope that you will join us for the next hour or so. And just wanted to keep you all informed. After today's class at 6:30, what we will do actually is we will continue and chant and sing Gora Arati for the pleasure of Sri Sri Gornitai, Sri Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. So when we finish at 6:30, don't be in a hurry to get off your Facebook live. Continue to stay on if you can, and we will sing Gora Arati for maybe 15 minutes, and that would be a nice way to connect us to their lordships. We all miss being at Goranga Center, but the days are going, and we are now in a planning stage to see how we can eventually move ourselves into the center as per the government's regulations. So don't despair, everyone, and keep the faith and keep the enthusiasm going. On top of that, we have Jagannath Snan Yatra coming up end of this week, and we will also have it live with an entire evening program. So don't miss the chance. Look out for all the information. Look out for all the information live, and I hope that you all continue to join us. So let's read the verse first. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Yashoda Nandana, Jaya Prajajanranjana, Jaya Yashoda Nandana, Jaya Prajajanranjana, Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki, Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Srila Gurudeva ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we chant chapter 5, text 2. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasah Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karau Ubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasa Karma Yogo Vishishyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasah Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karau Ubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasa Karma Yogo Vishishyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasah Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karau Ubhau tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the personality of Godhead said, Sannyasaha, renunciation of work, karma yogaha, work in devotion, cha, also, nishreyasa, nishreyasa karau, leading to the path of liberation, ubhau, both, tayoho, of the two, but, karma sannyasat, in comparison to the renunciation of fruitive work, karma yogaha, work in devotion, vishishyate, is better. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Let me repeat. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Please hear the purport. Fruitive activities seeking sense gratification are cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to transmigrate to different types of bodies, thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, 5 and 6 confirms this as follows. Nunam pramattaha kurute vikarma yat indriya pritaya apripnoti nasadu manye yata admanoyam asannapi kleshada ashadehaha parabhavasta varabhodha jato yavanna jignasata atma tattvam yavad kriyasta varidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha evam manakarma vasham prayunte avidyayadmani upadiyamane pritina yavan maivasudeve namuchyate deha yogyena tavat. People are mad after sense gratification, and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruitive activities in the past. Although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. Therefore, to act for sense gratification is not good. One is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about his real identity. As long as he does not know his real identity, he has to work for fruitive results, for sense gratification. And as long as one is engrossed in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another. Although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. Therefore, jnana, or knowledge that one is not this material body but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on the fruitive platform. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruitive platform. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the results of fruitive action, so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails a risk of falling. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 12258. Prapanchi kataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastunaha mumukshubi parityago vairagyam falgu katyate. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete. Renunciation is complete when it is in the knowledge that everything in existence belongs to the Lord and that no one should claim proprietorship over anything. One should understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone. Then where is the question of renunciation? One who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So you will find that chapter 5 is a very interesting chapter, Prabhus and Matajis, because it is entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Chapter 3 is also entitled Karma Yoga, but the missing part of chapter 3 are the words action in Krishna Consciousness. But somehow what is really interesting about chapter 5 is that while chapter 5 is concerned about action in Krishna Consciousness, the beginning part of chapter 5 deals so much with the principles of renunciation. And renunciation is so much a part of spiritual life. From the time we start up devotional service, from the time we take on devotional service, we are always told that we should restrict our movements, we should restrict the way we enjoy in this material world. We have to follow the 4 regulative principles. There are so many parts of Krishna consciousness where we say, give up this and give up that and give up that and give up this. And you will find actually that very often some people become quite discouraged when they come to Krishna consciousness initially, because they think, oh, that means I can't do what I want. I have to follow so many strict rules. The moment there are strict rules and you have to follow something, it means you also have to renounce something. So actually Krishna very practically discusses renunciation, because Arjuna is asking a very important question. If you see in 5.1, Arjuna is saying, Krishna, in the beginning you asked me to renounce the works. And then after that, again now you're recommending me to work. But this time you're telling me to work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? So Arjuna is trying to clarify the question that we will ask Krishna. Because on one point, we are told that action in this material world will always have reaction, isn't it? That's why the law of karma is so powerful. For every action that we do, there will be a reaction. So whenever we come into this world, we have to think so hard about our actions, because there will always be consequences. And either the consequences will catch you immediately or it'll catch you at some point. But there will always be consequences. So that's why before this, Krishna is telling Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita that if you cease performing these actions which have consequences, then actually you are not implicated in material life. But now, after that, Krishna is speaking in chapter 4 how there should be work actually, that we have to work. So Arjuna is asking the question, tell me now which is better. First you tell me to stop work, then you tell me to work. But now you're adding this clause in devotion. So which of the two is better? And now in chapter 2, Krishna very nicely says, and he says it in text 2, very definitively. He says, renunciation of work is good, and work in devotion is also good. So Krishna starts by saying, Arjuna, both are good. And what are they good for? They are good for liberation. Yes, but of the two, Krishna now makes it very clear. If one works in devotional service, it is better than merely renouncing activity. That's the whole point. If you look at the dictionary term for renunciation, you'll find the dictionary term for renunciation is very interesting. It generally means the formal rejection of something that you have personally endorsed or enjoyed previously. Think about it. It is a formal rejection of something that you had previously enjoyed and that you have endorsed previously. So supposing sometimes previously, you may have liked to gamble, or you were drinking and eating meat, and now you come to devotional service and the regulative principles tell you that you have to renounce, formally renounce, that which previously you were either implicated or you were attached to or you enjoyed. So in one sense, you have renounced everything. But in Krishna consciousness, it's very clear that the following regulative principles is one aspect of Krishna consciousness. But the fundamental aspect of Krishna consciousness is that somehow or another, we have to always remember Krishna. And all other principles are eva kinkaraha. All other principles are servants to this fundamental principle. So in essence, what Krishna is saying in a summary point is that even if we were to perform a renunciation-based activity and we give up something, if we do not fill that space which will come when we renounce, if we don't fill it with Krishna, then that renunciation may last for a while. But because there is nothing to fill the gap, we will go back to performing some other material activity. And we will not actually be genuinely renounced. We will become what we call falgu renunciation. It is considered to be artificial. Sometimes it's known as markata vairagya. Monkeys, they jump from tree to tree. So we renounce something, but we become attached to something else. And then when we don't like that, we suddenly become renunciate. And we say, now I've given that up and I'm going to something else. So it appears like we are renouncing. But actually, every time we renounce something, we become attached to something else. Today I like you, you have become my friend. After a while, I don't like you, so I renounce the friendship. Then because there is a void, I find another friend. And from that renunciation has come another attachment. So is it really renunciation? This is the question that's very important. So in Krishna consciousness, renunciation is much deeper, Prabhus and Matajis. It's a very important point. And that's why Arjuna is asking this question and Krishna is answering it. So let's break down what Krishna is trying to say. In essence, Krishna is saying that to renounce work is good. It is actually a big step for us. When we try to renounce work and we try to renounce the results of that work, it is very important. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, you will find actually in chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, 12, no, is it chapter 12? Yeah, I think it is chapter 12, text 11. Chapter 12, text 11. Krishna says very nicely there, that first you can try. If you cannot devote yourself to me, Krishna says in chapter 12, text 11, you please just at least renounce the results of that work and become self-situated. Very nice point. You renounce the results of that work and become self-situated. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that sometimes some persons cannot immediately come to devotional service. So it is better for them to retire from the results of their work. In other words, you give up the results of the work. So when you renounce from work, as Prabhupada is writing here, fruitive activities are activities where you engage in sense gratification. But if you try to give up the sense gratification and renounce the fruits of that action, then what happens is that you start using those fruits for better causes. And Prabhupada writes in the purport of 12:11, that's how sometimes people, when they cannot become devotees immediately, they start to do something charitable. For example, they engage in charitable activities, they engage in philanthropic activities. So what they are doing is they're moving from point A, where they were so attached to the results and they thought, it is only for my interests. And now they are graduating from that point to another point where they say, I'm not so attached to my results now. Whatever results I get, let's use it for someone else. This is an important principle for the spiritual journey of a devotee. Sometimes, as we become devotional in nature, we should always remember that self-interest should not be selfish. And that is why renunciation from work is considered a step up from attachment from work. And when we retire from the results of the work, it's very important, because Prabhupada explains in the purport very nicely that generally all of us work for some fruits. That's why Prabhupada uses the word fruitive activities. And fruitive activities are what binds us to this world. The moment we want to perform something for fruitive activity, Bhagavatam tells us we become implicated. And the moment we want the fruits can be good sometimes, and sometimes the fruit can taste very bad. But either way, you are caught. You are caught by the good results to be born into this world to enjoy that. And when those good results finish, all the bad things that have happened, which are held in check, they will come down. So either you have bad credits or good credits, your account is still there. It's still open. Account is not closed. So as long as your bank account in this material world is not closed, on account of your desire to enjoy fruitive activities, then whether it is good activity or bad activity, you will always get caught. And the moment you're caught by the laws of material nature, the law of karma will apply. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that very often anyone who's running after the results of work, they want the results of work because they want to enjoy and they want to gratify their senses. So sense gratification actually becomes the aim of anyone who wants to be attached to the results of the work. That's why everyone wants good results. Who works for bad results? Nobody works for bad results. The materialists will tell you, no, I don't work for bad results. I keep working in the hope that I'll get good results and I can enjoy. From my salary, I will enjoy something. When I withdraw my CPF, I will do something. When I buy this property, I will enjoy. So Bhagavatam tells us, whole life is spent just in the ability and the rush and the race to dovetail our activities to satisfy the senses. And that is how our lust increases. That is how our hankering increases. And that is how our greed increases. A good example of someone who was extremely attached to fruitive activities was Hiranyakashipu. Of course, Hiranyakashipu is a deluxe edition of enjoyer, because he enjoyed to no end. And not only did he enjoy at the expense of everybody else. And that is also the nature of those who enjoy fruitive activities. Those who enjoy fruitive activities, not only will they enjoy to gratify their senses, but Bhagavatam and experience will tell you that when we want to gratify our senses, we will exploit others and we will exploit the properties that belong to Krishna just for our satisfaction. And the moment you exploit something that doesn't belong to you, but you exploit it for your sense gratification, then Prabhupada writes in his purports in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we are considered to be thieves. We steal something that doesn't belong to us and we want to enjoy it, but it doesn't belong to us. And when that happens, then as Prabhupada quotes in the purport, he quotes 3 very important verses from Bhagavatam. These verses from Bhagavatam are actually teachings from Rishabdev, who is a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Rishabdev had 100 sons, and before he renounced this world, he actually sat down and he gave very nice, very powerful instructions to his son. And these 3 verses Prabhupada has extracted to tell us why renunciation, right, from work, but without devotion, can actually implicate us. Because we will eventually go back to renouncing something and becoming attached to something, but it will still be material. So Bhagavatam explains very nicely, Nunam pramattam kurute vikarma. So when you read this verse, Prabhupada writes very nicely, translates it. When a person considers sense gratification to be the aim of life, then he becomes mad, pramattaha, nunam pramattaha. He becomes mad for materialistic life, and he will engage. Nunam pramattam kurute, that means he will perform. He will perform all kinds of activities which have nothing to do with Krishna. That means the activity is sinful. What is the definition of sin? Sin means forgetfulness of Krishna. Very simple. So if you perform an activity that is not connected to Krishna and in which you forget Krishna, that activity is sinful. Very simple. So therefore, that is why the word vikarma is used. Nunam pramattam kurute vikarma. So those whose aim of life is merely to gratify the senses and to run after the fruits, if they cannot renounce this, then they are not eligible for liberation. So that is why those who at least take the first step to renounce these activities, then they become eligible, moving towards liberation. Otherwise, what happens, Prabhupada writes, translates, is that when you run after the sinful activities, you don't realize that this body is temporary and that our senses that we try to gratify, they are always asking for more and more and more and more. When was the last time you tried to satisfy your sense and your sense said, enough, I'm totally satisfied. Tomorrow I won't ask you for any more. Did any one of our senses tell us that today? Did we try to gratify one of our senses and say, oh, I went for a movie. Now I don't need to watch any more movies for life. Oh, I heard a wonderful song, and I don't want to hear any other songs because this has satisfied me. No. Did your tongue tell you today that, oh, actually I've tasted the best food in the world. From tomorrow, you can give me the most ill-tasting food. I'm satisfied. No. No one will be in that position. The only time you're in that position is when you're dead, because your senses are not alive. So Bhagavatam tells us that if we take the path of trying to always run after the fruits of the activities, then our senses will catch us and our minds will become disturbed. And when our minds become disturbed and our senses attack us all the time, we become very tired. And we realize that we cannot satisfy our senses. This is nicely stated, in Bhagavatam. 11.2.49 of Srimad Bhagavatam tells us this point very nicely. There, the Yogendras, they speak to Maharaj Nimi and they tell him this very nice point that tells us why renunciation as a principle is so important. Dehendriya prana manodiyamyo janmapyashud bhayatasya kriche samsara dharme avimuyamanaha smritya hare bhagavata pradanaha. The translation is very nice. The Yogendras, they tell Maharaj, and actually they're telling us this point. Within this material world, please understand something. This is what they're saying. Within this material world, your material body will always be subject to birth and decay. So no matter how much you try to give fruits to this body, the fruits will be temporary because body is temporary. Second point, your life air prana. No matter how you try to satisfy it, by nature, it is always harassed by hunger and thirst. Either you are hungry now or you're thirsty. Within 2-3 hours, you become hungry, you become thirsty. Third point, they say, your mind, the nature of the mind is that it is always anxious. Isn't it true? If your mind is not fixed at the lotus feet of Vasudeva, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, what happens? Your mind cannot renounce material activities. It always runs towards material activities. And when you try to satisfy one material aspect of your life, then you will find after it is satisfied, something else is not satisfied. And that is how we live in this material world. We work so hard, to produce something with great pain and labor, just for a moment of happiness, because we are attached to the fruitive activity, as Prabhupada writes. But we don't realize Krishna in the form of time, he destroys it. Because by nature, everything has to be destroyed. And yet the mind is always anxious. I remember in Kapila Dev's prayers, 3rd canto, 30th chapter, 2nd verse. Yam yam artam upadate dukkhena sukha hetave tam tam dunoti bhagavan puman shodati yat krite. Such a nice point. The translation is very nice. Whatever that is produced by the materialist. Who is the materialist? The materialist is one who doesn't renounce the results of the work. He's very attached to the results of the work. The materialist runs after something for just for a moment of happiness. But he doesn't realize after working so hard, yam yam artam upadate, after working so hard to acquire something, upadate means with difficulty. Isn't it true? In this material world, Prabhus and Matajis, is it easy to earn money? No, it's not. Whole month, your boss harasses you or you harass your boss, depending on which way, or you harass others. And at the end of 1 month, you earn one paycheck. But the moment you have worked so hard for this paycheck, just within 1-2 days, all the bills will arrive. And the credit card bills, SP bills, utility bills, they all come. And if you're not careful, half your paycheck is wiped out. And if Diwali is around, then another half is also wiped out. Because you have to buy saris, you have to buy jewelry, you have to buy new clothes, kurtas, all this, that. And then everything is gone. So in a moment, right, by the force of time in this material world, if you're attached to fruits in this world, then whatever that you work hard, so hard, tam tam dunoti Bhagavan, Krishna will just come and take away as time. And it all leaves you. Either the item that you like will leave you, or because you have to die, you will have to leave the item. And what happens to you? You become what we call sochate, yatkrite. You lament. Why? Because the mind is anxious. So the Yogendras then say, not only is your mind anxious, but your intelligence runs after that which cannot be obtained. And what is it that cannot be obtained in this world? Satisfaction of the senses. You cannot. That is why Krishna in the beginning has said, renunciation of work is needed. We must move away from fruitive activities. And that is why Rishabdev is saying here that a foolish man who is running after gratifying his senses does not realize that due to his past deeds and misdeeds, he has created this temporary body. The body that you and I have is the result of all our past desires. And every desire that we have, one material body is ready to be born. So if you have 100 desires, you can be assured all your material bodies are lining up. But after all the desires are there, they are also not fulfilled because the aim of life is wrong. The aim of life is fruits. We don't realize that the aim of life should be to please Krishna. Haritoshanam is the real aim of life. And when one doesn't realize that, then Rishabdev says he is not a very intelligent person. He doesn't realize he has to get material body after material body just to satisfy his senses, which cannot be satisfied. And that is why the Yogendras tell Maharaj Nimi that because of this great struggle with our senses, eventually our mind, our body and our senses, it becomes kriche. Kriche means they become exhausted. So what is the way out of this? The way out of this is the word sannyasaha. Sannyasaha means renunciation. How do we renounce in the proper way? That is important. It is found in the third line of the verse. Samsara dharme avimuyamanaha. We must accept that the nature of this world is that it is always implicating us in action and reaction. Once you understand the nature of this world, then what happens to you? Smritya hari bhagavata pradanaha. Such a person becomes a devotee of the Lord. That person is known as bhagavata pradana. Why? Because that devotee remains aloof from all this material enjoyment. The word that's used is aloof. Aloof is another meaning of renounced. So that's why 11.2.49 is a very important verse for us to remember. It explains to us 5.2 very nicely, and it explains to us 5.5.4 of Srimad Bhagavatam very nicely. So a devotee of the Lord doesn't become bewildered by all this material sense gratification, because he knows it is the nature of the world. And why does he want to become implicated? That's why after understanding 5.5.4, Prabhupada then quotes 5.5.5 in Srimad Bhagavatam. Because 5.5.5 gives us the solution to the problems raised in 5.5.4. 5.5.5, Rishabdev says, as long as you do not inquire into the spiritual values of life. In other words, as long as you do not inquire into the goal of your life, then what will happen? You will always be defeated. Not only will you be defeated, Bhagavatam tells us that you will actually not be peaceful. If you look at the purport of 266 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, at the purport, Prabhupada writes a very nice point. Those who are very attached to this material world and to the fruits, what is the symptom of those who are attached? It's a good test for us. We become disturbed. We become disturbed. And Prabhupada writes there, disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. And that is what 555 is saying. When we do not realize what is the goal of life, then we are very attached to the fruits of our activities. The goal of life is to actually render devotional service to the lotus feet of Krishna. That is the goal of life. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yator bhaktir adoksaje. It is to render transcendental service to Krishna. And how do you do this? Ahaituki apratihata. Our devotional service to Krishna must have no motivation. No motivation means we must renounce sense gratification. And how do you renounce sense gratification? By acting in devotional service. So therefore, if your goal of life is not clear, Prabhus and Matajis, then our mind will be disturbed. And when the mind is disturbed, then what happens? We are always implicated in material life. So Prabhupada writes in that purport, one must become certain that Krishna is the enjoyer. He is the proprietor. He is the friend of everyone. And he is the proprietor of everything. Then Prabhupada says, if you are certain of this, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. And peace is a symptom of genuine renunciation. Otherwise, parabhavas. We become defeated and we become miserable. So then the question is, how to come to this stage of renunciation? That is why in the second paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada says, if you want to renounce work, you have to renounce work with knowledge. This is a very important point. Only with proper transcendental knowledge can we renounce work. Only if we are equipped to know that this world is temporary, can you actually renounce this world. If you cannot accept that this world is temporary, how can you renounce it? It's very difficult. So inquiry into the pursuit of transcendental knowledge of the self is needed for renunciation. But now Krishna says that superior to renunciation of work on the strength of knowledge, Krishna says superior to that is when you actually perform work, but you perform it in devotion. And Prabhupada confirms the same point in the purport. And what does he say in the purport? In the purport, Prabhupada says, jnana or knowledge is not sufficient for liberation from this material cycle of birth and death. So what does Prabhupada say we must do? Prabhupada says, after receiving this knowledge, you have to act on it. Now all of us have read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. We have read Prabhupada's books so many times. And all that knowledge of we are not this body, we must renounce this material world. We have heard this hundreds of times, actually. But at the end of the day, the difference between a devotee who renounces it and becomes a devotee and someone who's struggling and still cannot come out of material sense gratification is only one point: whether that person has acted on the knowledge. Have we actually put into practice what Srila Prabhupada has stated in our books? Have we put into practice what Krishna has given as instructions in Bhagavad Gita? Have we put into practice what all the great Bhagavatas in Bhagavatam have advised us to do? That is the point. If you look at the purport here, you find actually one has to act in the status of spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. That is why you can renounce work and you can renounce the fruits of the work. But if you don't become attached to Krishna in proper transcendental knowledge and then act on it, then it becomes what we call armchair philosophy. You and I will have classes. You will talk, I will talk. You will say, Prabhu, nice class. I will say, Prabhu, nice class. And at the end of the day, we never act on what we are talking. We just talk, and we don't act. That's why if you look at the purport, the word act is italicized. It's actually italicized. That shows you how important Prabhupada actually put an emphasis on that word. Actually italicized it. So it's really important, Prabhus and Matajis. There's a nice story, three men were waiting for a mango to drop from the mango tree. It was very ripe. And mango is very nice tasting. I think it's mango season now, if I'm not wrong. So they were waiting for the mango to drop. So what happened was, as they waited and waited, they were talking and talking and waiting and waiting. What was the objective for them if the mango dropped? Common sense will tell us that they wanted to taste the mango. Why wait under a tree for a fruit? Only if you want to taste it. Now suddenly at that point, while they were waiting, there was a gust of wind. And the branch of the mango, where the mango was, started to move, started to sway. At the same time, a myna bird came and it sat on the branch. And it almost occurred simultaneously. The branch swayed, the myna bird added its weight to the branch, and before you know it, the mango dropped. Now the three men had waited the whole day for the mango. And while they were waiting, they were discussing about Thailand mangoes and India mangoes and Pakistan mangoes. And they were saying, this one is tasty, that one you can get here, oh, this one you can get from Mustafa. They were talking all about it all the time. And then when the mango dropped, they picked it up. They were supposed to eat it. And just when they were about to eat it, one of them said, what do you think caused the mango to drop? And the second man said, it was the gust of wind. It moved the branch of the tree and the mango dropped. Second man said, no, it was the weight of the bird that caused the mango to drop. And the man who asked the question said, I think it's a combination of both. It was a combination of both. So they argued and argued. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. What's the probability of that? What's the probability of this? And as they were arguing, one small boy passed by. And he saw three men. He saw the mango on the floor. He saw the three men again. He picked up the mango. He bit into the mango. And he said, this is really relishable mango. And he walked away. And after the three men had spoken and spoken and spoken, they then looked down and realized, wait a minute, where's the mango? And they realized that after all the talk of the taste of the mango, the sweetness of the mango, and then having knowledge of the mango, and then talking about why the mango dropped and what was the reason for the mango to drop, they had forgotten one very important thing. They had forgotten to act. They were supposed to eat the mango, and they missed that. And therefore, that is why, after that, you can imagine how much agitation they had. So if we don't act on spiritual knowledge, we will continue to be agitated. It is a step up from renouncing fruitive activities. But now Prabhupada and Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita are telling us that we have to go beyond that. We have to go beyond that. It's a very important thing. Therefore, the real meaning of renunciation is that if you give up a fruitive activity, there is always going to be a vacuum. And the law of material creation is the vacuum has to be filled. If you fill it with another material activity, it's not real renunciation. But if you gain a higher taste for an activity, then it becomes genuine renunciation. That's why in 259 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has advised us, and this is an important verse to understand karma yoga and action in Krishna consciousness. He says, Vishaya vinivartante, niraharasya dehinaha, rasa varjam rasopyasya, param dritsva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment. So we may renounce by restricting ourselves. But our taste is still there. I may say, I want to stop now listening to pop music, but my taste for music is still there. So what happens? If you seize that if you seize that engagement without experiencing a higher taste, then you cannot become fixed in consciousness. What happens if you have a taste for music, but suddenly you start hearing kirtans? You chant Krishna's names, and you find, hey, last time, yes, I liked music. Now I still like music. And my taste for music is more than satisfied by the wonderful taste of Krishna's names. You see? Param dritsva nivartate. We are acting still, but we are acting in devotion. And therefore, even while we are acting, we are actually renouncing. It's a brilliant point in Vaishnava philosophy. Action in Krishna consciousness is genuine renunciation. That's the whole point. Because if we don't fill up that void, then the mind is so powerful. I think it's the next verse, after 260. Yadato hi api kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prasabham manaha. By force, prasabham. Prasabham means by force, manaha means the mind. Krishna warns us after he speaks 259. He says to Arjuna, you need a higher taste to renounce the lower taste. But if you don't have a higher taste, then what happens? Arjuna, the senses are so strong and so impetuous. In other words, they have a mind of their own, and they will forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination. Even a man of discrimination who's trying to artificially control his senses without love of Vasudeva, without devotional service. The mind is so powerful, it will carry. So even if you endeavor to control your senses in an artificial way, let me do philanthropic work, let me do charitable work, in the end you will seek pride, you will seek fame, you will seek adoration, you will seek some sense gratification from a material activity again. And this is seen in so many examples in Shastras. Vishwamitra was such a powerful yogi, but because he did not engage in Krishna consciousness, and he was trying to control his anger and his senses through mystic yoga performance. What happened? In more than one occasion, he either succumbed to anger or he succumbed to lust. And either way, his senses were distracted. His mind was forcibly carried away by anger or distraction of material objects. Another good example is Shaubari Muni in the 9th canto. Shaubari Muni was a very powerful sage. And at one point, he didn't want to meditate on land because there was too much distraction. So what did he do? Bhagavatam tells us he dived into the waters of near the Yamuna river. And there he stayed for years and years and years. And there he was just concentrating and meditating in an effort to control his senses and renounce all activities. But after such a long time of renunciation, he just opened his eyes for a while. And what did he see? He saw two fishes engaged in mating. Just fishes engaged in the most natural thing that fishes will have to do to progenitate. But it agitated his mind, which he tried to control for thousands of years. And then he came out of the waters and he sought out the king of that land and he asked for the daughters in marriage. So instead of marrying one lady to satisfy his senses, Bhagavatam said he ended up with 50 wives. And if you have 50 wives, you will not be able to satisfy your senses. I think you will be dragged everywhere, 50 different places. And that's what happened to Shaubari Muni. After so many years of trying to satisfy everybody just to satisfy himself, he decided that he repented and he realized and reflected that all this because I artificially tried to control my senses. And Shaubari Muni's case is also very interesting. Bhagavatam and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells us that Shaubari Muni could not control his senses not only because he was not engaged in devotional service, but because a long time ago he offended Garuda, the pure devotee of the Lord, by trying to stop Garuda's natural feeding of the fishes. And he did that in a philanthropic, protective way, but he didn't realize he was offending a devotee of the Lord. So this is a very clear point. As long as we are trying to serve Krishna with love and devotion, as long as we are trying to serve his devotees, which pleases him even more than serving him directly, we will always be protected, not artificially, but in a very natural manner by the aura of devotional service, the aura of higher taste, which is so important in devotional service. And that's why Shaubari Muni actually fell down. That is why Vishwamitra also fell down. And that is why Durvasa Muni also became so upset with Ambarish Maharaj, if you recall. And he could not control his senses. And he just found fault with Ambarish Maharaj. So when we try to artificially renounce without proper execution of devotional service and acting on our spiritual knowledge, then anger, greed, fault finding, criticism, actually these things don't renounce us. These things become attached to us. And we think that we have renounced everything in the control of senses. But we become slaves to our greed, slaves to our lust, slaves to our anger, slaves to our fault finding, and slaves to a critical fault finding mentality. How can we become devotees that way? It's so difficult. And why is it not surprising that when we live that way, even looking like as if we are renunciates and wearing dhoti tilak and acting like we have renounced so many things, why is it that our mind continues to be disturbed? It is because the renunciation has not been on the platform of devotional action and devotional consciousness. But look at Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, was actually so fixed in his devotional service that his mind and senses were not ravaged even when the Nawab, the ruler, tried to conspire against him and send this beautiful, attractive lady to distract him in the middle of the night. He was alone with her, and yet his senses were not disturbed. Why? Because he renounced his senses by using his senses in the service of the Lord. He acted on the transcendental knowledge that he is a servant of the Lord. He acted on the transcendental knowledge that this body is meant for the Lord and it's not my property. So I should never enjoy separately from Krishna. And when he saw that lady in front of him, he did not see an object of beauty that he should enjoy. He saw her as a spirit soul, and he saw her not as his property, as Prabhupada writes in the purport. He saw her as the property of Krishna. And so his desire was to serve her. And what did he do? He chanted for 2 days and 2 nights and begged her humbly to sit down and wait before he would try to fulfill her desires. And on the 3rd night after he finished his chanting, because his devotional service was so powerful, because his motives were so pure, and because he genuinely saw everything in the world as part and parcel of Krishna, he did not artificially reject the woman and say, "Go away from me." No, he did not do that. He just continued with devotional service. Ambrish Maharaj did not react in an angry manner when Durvasa Muni became angry. He just remembered the Lord and he chanted the Lord's name. And the Lord protected his senses. The Lord protected his mind. And because Haridas Thakur was 100% engaged in the chanting of the holy name, Krishna protected his senses. Krishna protected his heart. And because he considered another entity as a spirit soul, what happened? She also became a devotee. Her consciousness also changed. So, artificial renunciation does not mean that we become liberated. Even renunciation from work without fixing ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna and acting on it also does not help us. This is a very important point for us to remember. And that is why Prabhupada says so nicely. Prabhupada says in the lecture, in the 4th, he gave a lecture on the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, from the verse 39 all the way through many verses up to 5th chapter, 3rd verse. And there he said very nicely, in 1966, this lecture is there, 24th of August 1966. Srila Prabhupada says very nicely, just like Arjuna. Arjuna was not a sannyasi, but after hearing Bhagavad Gita, he did not take up the renounced order of life. He didn't dress himself in an orange-colored dress. He didn't go away from the battlefield. Prabhupada says he remained the same man, the same military man, but he became the most perfect Krishna-conscious man. So Prabhupada says that is the principle. Sannyasaha karma yogascha. That's the line in the verse today. Sannyasaha karma yogascha. Nishreyasa karau ubhav. Either you take sannyas or you remain in your position. Prabhupada says it doesn't matter. Whatever position you are in now, Prabhus and Matajis, retain it. It doesn't matter. Prabhupada says you can attain the highest perfection from any position, provided you are Krishna conscious. That is very important. So a devotee is not really bothered in what station of life he is in or she is in. The most important thing is, are we Krishna conscious? Then we are genuinely renounced. What is that verse in 8.7 of Bhagavad Gita? Tasmad sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha mayarpita mano buddhir mamai vaishyasi shamsayaha. Arjuna, you should always think of me. How? In the form of Krishna. At the same time, you carry out whatever duties of fighting you have. Just dedicate your activity to me. See the word activity? Action. But dedicate it to who? To Vasudeva, to Krishna. Dedicate your mind and your intelligence. How do you do that? Fix it on Krishna. F. Fix it on Krishna. If you want to fix something, you have to deposit something, isn't it? When you have a fixed deposit, you're fixing your money, but you're also depositing it. So when we want to fix our attention on Krishna, we have to deposit ourselves at his lotus feet. That's why it's called FD, fixed deposit. Deposit also means dependence. And renunciation in Krishna consciousness actually means, positively, dependence on Krishna. It's a very nice point Prabhupada makes. Renunciation in Krishna consciousness positively means dependence on Krishna. And what kind of dependence? Fixed dependence. So FD is very useful for us. When you go to the bank, you always want to place FDs because they are secure. You don't break your FDs until you have reached a particular goal. So you fix your mind on Krishna. Fix your intelligence on Krishna. And at the same time, you deposit yourself at the lotus feet of Krishna by depending on him. And that's what Arjuna did. And because he did that, Bhagavatam tells us, he attained perfection. He attained perfection. That is the meaning of renunciation. And that's why Prabhupada concludes so nicely by saying that, actually, frankly speaking, the only thing we need to do is to maintain our body and soul together. Our body is the property of Krishna. Therefore, we must maintain it. Nothing wrong. But real renunciation means that we should always think ourselves as being part and parcel of Krishna. We have no right to enjoy the results of our work. Krishna has the right to enjoy it. We should actually renounce it. It's very important for us to know that. And that's why Prabhupada says in the purport of 3:31:47, and this is a very nice point. Prabhupada says, while discharging devotional service in Krishna consciousness, one should not be miserly. He should not unnecessarily show that he has renounced this world. Prabhupada writes, renunciation is not possible. If you renounce your palatial building and go to the forest, there is actually no renunciation. What an interesting point. If you renounce your palatial building, your HDB flat, your condos, and you go to the forest, Prabhupada says in the purport, that is actually not renunciation. Why? Because the forest is the property of Krishna, and your house is also the property of Krishna. So what have you renounced actually? What have you renounced? You were not even the proprietor in the first place. But if you use what has been given to you for Krishna, if you dovetail your activities for Krishna, then that becomes genuine renunciation. It's a very, very nice point that we must remember. And so to conclude, what will actually bring us to the stage of action in Krishna consciousness, which automatically includes renunciation from dependence on fruitive activities? What is it that we must do? If we want to renounce, Prabhupada says very nicely that if we want to renounce, a renunciate is one who is very humble. A renunciate is one who is very simple. Look at Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur had nothing to him except the implements of his devotional service. Therefore, he was very simple. So if we simplify our existence, then we can act in Krishna consciousness in a renounced way. We do not have to wait for everything to fall in place and tell ourselves that we will earn so much money, at 60 years old we will renounce everything. Bharat Maharaj in Bhagavatam is a good example. He did everything and then renounced everything and went very quietly, very in a lonely place to concentrate on Krishna. While he tried to concentrate on Krishna, he had no devotee association. So when we act in Krishna consciousness, we act in Krishna consciousness in sadhu sangha. That is a very important principle for genuine renunciation. We never renounce the association of devotees. We work together with devotees for the pleasure of Krishna. That means we renounce our own fruitive and material interests. In Vaikuntha, the description of the kingdom of God, it is so nicely stated that there all the birds are singing very beautifully for Krishna. But when the cuckoo bird starts singing the glories of Krishna, all the other birds stop and they want to hear the glories of Krishna. Even though every one of them, each of them are experts in singing, yet they all stop and they are not envious of each other and they all hear the glories of Krishna. So when we come together united in service of the Lord, then each one of us will help each other to automatically renounce anger, greed, lust, hankering, because these are the real things that we should renounce. And if we use our activities for Krishna, then these qualities of humility, simplicity, not fault finding, seeing good in the Vaishnavas, they will automatically come in our hearts. And greed, lust, hankering, they will all leave us. Why? Because the most important principle, that is what Prabhupada says at the end, is the principle that at the end of the day, the only way to genuinely renounce ourselves from this world is actually when we are purifying our senses. That is why it is so nicely stated by Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion. Sarva upadi vinir muktam. One must perform devotional service in such a way as to dovetail all our senses to Krishna. When we perform it that way, then what happens? Two things will happen. Our senses become purified. In other words, our consciousness become purified. Why? For the love of Vasudeva. And we become free of material designations. In other words, we renounce material designations. Material designations do not catch us. We are not concerned that you should fan our egos for us to serve Krishna. We don't need a tag as a temple president or in charge of this, in charge of that to perform service for Krishna. The common man can perform service for Krishna. The Prime Minister can perform service to Krishna. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And when one lives in such a renounced way, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has declared that actually Krishna is so kind that he awakens this love of Godhead in our hearts. When Haridas Thakur could not enter the temple of Jagannath because at that time he was of a different faith and therefore he was not permitted to enter, he did not renounce Krishna consciousness because he could not enter. In fact, he became more fixed chanting the names of the Lord. He did not have a void in his heart, but because he was so fixed for the love of Vasudeva, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself came out of Jagannath Puri every day after taking darshan. And then what would he do? He would come and see Haridas Thakur. In other words, the Lord himself gave darshan to Haridas Thakur. Why? Because Haridas Thakur's renunciation was genuine. He was free of material designation. He did not fall fine with Jagannath Puri because they did not allow him to go in. He did not fall fine with anyone because they regarded him maybe as a person of different faith. Material designations are not important when we renounce fruitive activities and when we are focused on pleasing the Lord and we understand everything that we have in this world can actually be used by Krishna and for Krishna. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Srila Gurudev ki, Nitai Gaura Premanjana. Thank you very much for your time, Prabhus and Matajis. Are there any questions that you have? I'm looking through this. I'm not sure if there's a question. There's a lot of Hare Krishnas, so Hare Krishnas to every one of you. Let me see. If there are, okay, I have one question here. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, how do we understand we are acting on what we are reading? Very nice point. How do we know if what we are reading we are acting on? The symptom will be, Prabhus and Matajis, that when we act in Krishna consciousness, we actually become blissful. You will experience peace and you will experience bliss. Why? Because 266 of Bhagavad Gita tells us that if we become connected to Krishna, therefore we become peaceful and we become happy. So the real test actually is that you will know if you're acting on Krishna consciousness when you experience what is stated in Bhagavad Gita as susukam. And if supposing you say, I don't feel so very happy when I'm doing Krishna consciousness, I'm very tense, don't worry. Have faith in the process. Isn't it true, Prabhus and Matajis? Yatra idyante katham ristas trishnayaha prasammo yadaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yat kaschana notvega yatra kaschana. Isn't it true that even if we say that I'm not always happy, but isn't it true that when we are now discussing Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, the last 1 hour at least, 1 hour 5 minutes, sorry, the last 1 hour 5 minutes at least, isn't it true that 3 things have happened? 1, yatra idyante katham ristas. Whenever we hear topics of Krishna, Krishnayaha prasammo yadaha. Whatever hankerings we feel in our heart, there is no hankering when we are hearing about Krishna. You're very peaceful and self-satisfied. That's true. Second, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu. Even if our nature is to fault find, criticize, or become envious of people, when we're hearing about Krishna or anything related to Krishna, isn't it true that we are very peaceful again? We have forgotten how to find fault with someone. Very true. It's true. And the third thing that's happening is nobody feels any fear. Na udvega. No one's feeling anxiety. Maybe if you're in the center, you are anxious because prasadam will be served soon. But now you're not in the center, so you cannot be anxious for prasadam also. Which means there's no anxiety. That means when you act on Krishna consciousness, there will be at least these 3 things that will happen when you perform it. Be patient. Do not become discouraged. By chanting Krishna's names, you cannot explain it. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam tells us devotional service is subtle. Gambhira. It is subtle. It works on you in a way that you don't realize. But after a while, you experience this bliss. Why do you think even though we have so many restrictions, no one actually is feeling those restrictions as stressful? We don't. We're very happy because we can chant. Devotees are great cooks. Prasadam offered to Krishna tastes always better. We can dance for Krishna. We can sing for Krishna. We're all waiting to go back to the center just to see Krishna. So all this is giving us peace. Why? Because we're acting on it. I hope that's useful, Krishna Daya Prabhu. Thank you for your time. Now I'm going to do one thing. Don't go away. I'm just going to make a slight movement of this. So bear with me as I move. I will move it in such a way that you will see me, but we will do a little bit of movement so that I can put this here, so that I can sit down. Let me sit down. Okay, make sure everything's in place. Just 1 minute. I hope you can see Panchatattva because we're singing Gora Arati. Now I'm going to sit down. Let me adjust. I think the video is still live. That's very good. So now we're going to get the kartals, the mridanga, and be seated, and we will sing Gorarati together. Gorarati is so important. So I'm just going to read the translation to Gorarati. Oh, 1 minute. My head should not block Panchatattva. Okay. All right, this is good. All glories to the beautiful Arati ceremony of Lord Chaitanya. This Gora Arati is taking place in a grove on the banks of the Jahnavi, Ganges, and is attracting the minds of all living entities in the universe. On Lord Chaitanya's right side is Lord Nityananda, and on his left is Sri Gadadhar. Nearby stands Sri Advaita, and Srivas Thakur is holding an umbrella over Lord Chaitanya's head. Lord Chaitanya has sat down on a jewel throne, and the demigods headed by Lord Brahma perform the Arati ceremony. Narahari Sarkara and other associates of Lord Chaitanya fan him with chamaras, and devotees headed by Sanjaya Pandit, Mukunda Dutt, and Vasu Ghosh sing sweet kirtan. Conch shells, bells, and kartals resound, and the mridangas play very sweetly. This kirtana music is supremely sweet and relishable to hear. The brilliance of Lord Chaitanya's face conquers millions upon millions of moons, and the garland of forest flowers around his neck shines. Lord Shiva, Shukadev Goswami, and Narada Muni are all there, and their voices are choked with the ecstasy of transcendental love. Thus, Thakur Bhakti Vinod envisions the glory of Lord Sri Chaitanya. Jai. Could you just reduce the echo a little bit? Can you help to read it? A little bit. So I'm going to start now, Prabhus and Matajis. And let us remember the beautiful forms of Sri Sri Panchatattva. Let us remember the beautiful forms of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadramani. We really thank Chandrasekhar Acharya Prabhu, Subhadana Mataji and Gopalak Prabhu, because they are doing such wonderful service to take care of their lordships. And how much their lordships must be wanting their service, and how fortunate they are on account of their sincerity. Jiva Jayo Jayo Gora Chande Arati Kasho Jiva Jayo Jayo Gora Chande Arati Kasho Jahanavi Jagamanalo Jahanavi Jagamanalo Jivanati Haricha Amegadadara Jivanati Haricha Amegadadara Nikateha Vaitama Shri Asachatradhara Nikateha Vaitama Shri Asachatradhara Nikateha Vaitama Shri Asachatradhara Nikateha Jiva Goshi Achan Gauracha Ratna Simha Sahani Jiva Goshi Achan Gauracha Bharati Koero Brahma Adi Devakamane Bharati Koero Brahma Adi Devakamane Jivananda Hari Adi Kori Chamaradula Sanjaya Mukunda Bhashu Goshadigamaya Sanjaya Jaya Mukunda Bhashu Goshadikaya Hari Hari Goshadikaya Jiva Shankara Bhaje Ghanta Bhaje Bhaje Karta Jiva Shankara Bhaje Ghanta Bhaje Bhaje Karta Madhurami Gandha Bhaje Hara Hara Sahaya Madhurami Gandha Bhaje Hara Hara Sahaya Jayo Gaurachandane Bharati Krishna Jiva Jayo Jayo Jai Gaurani Jaya Gaurani 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 Jaya Gaurani Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Astityadi Satarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Srila Prabhupada Sunyavadi Asatyadi Satari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Bol Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jagannatha, Baladeva Jaya Subhadra, Jai Jagannath, Jaya Gaurani Pai, Gaurani Pai, Gaurani Pai, Jaya Gaurani Pai, Jaya Gaurani Pai, Gaurani Pai, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaurani Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai Shri La Prabhupada ki Jai Shri La Gurudeva ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda ki Nitai Gaur Premanjana. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we pray that we have more such sessions. And as soon as we can, Krishna willing, we will give you news and information on how we intend to progressively get back to the devotional activities in Gauranga Center. Hare Krishna, please continue to be enlivened in your devotional service and keep up the fire of your chanting and your enthusiasm. Please renounce all feelings of neglect, depression, and feel happy in Krishna consciousness. I'm going to end the live video now. Hare Krishna.